There is an invisible line that separates mockery from sacrilege. It is a line that most people cannot see, drawn with ink that is only visible under the light of the sacred. It is a border, not like the one drawn on a map, but like the one that exists on the edge of the ocean, a zone of impact where one world meets another, an immense, powerful world indifferent to our desires. The ancient man understood this. He understood that the sacred is not synonymous with safe. He understood that divine power is like fire. You can cook your food with it, or it can burn your house to the ground. It is a force of nature, and like all forces, it has rules. But crossing that invisible line does not require seeing it. It only requires a particular kind of arrogance, a blind trust that only the world we can touch exists, that everything we cannot measure is an illusion, that the sacred is a joke invented by weak men, and the consequences of that crossing are not a theological debate. They are absolute, mechanical, and indifferent to remorse. This is a story about that line, and about the price of spitting on it. It begins, like so many things, with a man walking alone. His name is Elisha, but his name is not important at this moment. What matters is the cloak he wears over his shoulders. It is a rough cloak made of camel hair, and it still smells of dust and ozone, of the smoke from a fire that was not of this world. It is the cloak of his master, Elijah. And Elisha is a man in shock. You have just witnessed the impossible. Days earlier, on the other side of the Jordan River, after begging him not to leave him, he saw his teacher, his mentor, the only father he truly knew, enveloped in a whirlwind. He saw a chariot of fire, a vehicle of eternity, descend and take Elijah alive to heaven. He saw what no mortal should see. He saw the hinge of reality open and close. He is in mourning, but his mourning is mixed with sacred terror. He has inherited a double portion of his teacher's spirit, and right now, that inheritance does not feel like a gift. It feels like a mountain of lead crushing his shoulders. It is an authority he did not ask for, a loneliness he cannot understand. The power is new to him. It is raw, untested. Was what he saw real? Or was it the desert sun? The test is immediate. He stands before the Jordan River, the same obstacle that separated him from his old life. He takes the cloak that Elijah dropped. He strikes it against the water and shouts, "Where is the God of Elijah?" It is a desperate question, the question of an orphan. And the river responds. The waters part in two, piling up on his left and his right, as they once did for Moses. And Elisha walks on dry ground. His question has been answered. The God of Elijah is now with him. The other prophets, who observed from a distance, see it. They run to meet him and fall on their faces. They recognize the truth. The spirit of Elijah, the spirit of fire, judgment, and power, now rests upon Elisha. At that moment, Elisha ceases to be an apprentice. He becomes the only true voice of God in a land that has forgotten how to listen. He is the plenipotentiary ambassador of a king in a territory that has declared rebellion. His journey is not aimless. He is not wandering in his pain. His first act as anointed prophet is a declaration. He heads to a specific place, a dangerous place, a place that represents everything his master fought against. He heads to Bethel. Bethel is not just any city. It is a festering wound in the heart of the nation of Israel. It is a symbol of betrayal. Years ago, when the kingdom was divided into two after Solomon, King Jeroboam of the north faced a political problem. The center of worship for his people remained Jerusalem in the southern kingdom. He feared that if his people went down to Jerusalem to worship, their hearts would turn toward the southern king. Their loyalty would be divided. So Jeroboam made a brilliant political decision that was theologically disastrous. He said, "It is too much to go up to Jerusalem." And to solve this problem, he created a new state religion. He established two rival worship centers, and one of them, the main one, was in Bethel. There, so that the people would have something visible to worship, something similar to the gods of Egypt that their ancestors knew. He erected a golden calf. He contaminated the priesthood, appointing men who were not from the tribe of Levi, anyone who could pay the price. He created his own festivals, his own rituals. Bethel, therefore, is not just a collection of houses and markets. It is the capital of apostasy. It is the Vatican of heresy. The very air is charged with the smoke of sacrifices to a dead idol. It is a city that has made contempt for the invisible God its state policy. It is a place where true prophets, like Elisha's master, Elijah, are seen as public enemies, as agitators, as terrorists threatening the stability of the regime. It is the place that sponsors its own schools of false prophets, hundreds of men in robes who say exactly what the king wants to hear, men who prophesy peace and prosperity while the nation rots from within. And to this city, this nest of snakes, this fortress of cynicism, walks Elisha. He ascends the dusty path, a lonely man, his figure outlined against the afternoon sun. He is the embodiment of truth in a world that has built its economy on a lie. He is a man who bears the authority of the God they have replaced with a metal statue, and he knows where he is going. There is no innocence in this journey. It is a confrontation. His mere presence is an accusation. A city that has made contempt for God, its state policy, cannot expect its citizens to respect their prophet. Culture, like water, flows from above. Poison flows from the altar of the golden calf into the streets, into homes, into the minds of children. Children imitate their parents' sins, but with a louder cruelty, with the arrogance of youth who believe they have uncovered the lie of the universe. And so, as Elisha approaches the city gates, a group comes out to meet him. The text calls them young men, or boys. It is a terribly misleading word in our modern language. We are not talking about 5-year-old children playing in the dust. The original Hebrew word, na'arim, is a term with unsettling flexibility. It is the same word used to describe soldiers in an army. It is the word that describes the servants of a king. It is the word that describes a 17-year-old Joseph who was already managing his father's possessions. These are not innocent children stumbling upon the prophet. They are a group of young men, a gang. The text will later tell us their exact number, 42. This is not a chance encounter. It is a mob, 42 young men. They leave the city, noisy, confident, with the security that comes from the number and anonymity of the group. Maybe they come from the school of false prophets, the children of the heretical establishment, feeling smart and modern. They see this lonely man. They recognize him, not by his face, which they perhaps have never seen, but by his cloak. That camel hair cloak is a uniform. It is the hated symbol of true prophecy. It is the enemy's flag. And in him, in this lonely man who represents an authority they despise, they see an opportunity for mockery. The first one shouts something. Another laughs and adds something worse. The venom is contagious. The cowardice of the mob feeds itself. And in seconds, the 42 young men have joined in a single chorus of contempt. They begin to shout at him, dance around him, throw small stones or dust at him. The insult is specific. It is sharp, researched, and designed to hurt in the deepest place. Bald, go up. Bald, go up. Let's analyze this insult. It is not a simple, childish mockery. It is a two-edged theological dagger, designed to completely annihilate his authority. First, bald. Why bald? It is a term of absolute contempt. In an ancient culture that associated a full head of hair and abundant hair with strength, virility, and God's blessing, think of Samson, calling a man bald was calling him weak, impotent, a spiritual eunuch. But it is much deeper than that. In Levitical law, one of the feared signs of leprosy, the disease that made you ritually impure and exiled you from society, was baldness appearing on the head. By calling him bald, they are not only mocking his appearance, they are implying that he is impure. They are declaring that this supposed man of God is, in fact, a spiritual leper, someone whom no one should touch or listen to. It is an attempt to nullify his holiness. And if that were not enough, his teacher, Elias, was famous for being a hairy man. Elias was the archetype of the wild prophet, untamed, full of raw and visible power. When calling Elisha bald, the crowd of Bethel is saying, "You are not him. You are not your teacher. You are a pale, smooth, and weak imitation. You are an impostor, the power left with the hair. We do not fear you. You are a filthy fraud." That was the first edge, but the second edge of the insult is truly fatal. Sube. What does sube mean? They are not simply telling him, "Go away," or "Continue your way uphill." They are shouting the Hebrew word, ale. And this word, in this context, is the most cynical, blasphemous, and direct reference possible to the most sacred and recent event in Elisha's life, the ascension of Elias. The news of the chariot of fire had spread. For believers, it was the final validation of Elijah's ministry, the proof that Yahweh was the God who had power over life, death, and heaven itself. For the cynics of Bethel, for the worshippers of the golden calf, for the materialistic culture that only believed in what could be touched, the story was a ridiculous joke. And now, this mob, from the heart of the city of the golden calf, mocks that miracle. They are saying, "Oh, so your teacher ascended to heaven? What a great story. How convenient. The great magic trick. If you are his successor, if you are so powerful, if your God is so real, why don't you ascend too? Ascend, bold one. Ascend and disappear like him. Show us your trick." Oh, you can't. Because you're a fraud. Because your teacher didn't ascend. He probably died in the desert, and you made up that story. Your God is a lie, and you are his bald and pathetic prophet. This is not school bullying. This is a declaration of theological war. It is the deepest challenge possible. The city of Bethel, through the voice of its 42 men, has looked at God's anointed representative and spat in his face. They have questioned his authority, his power, his legitimacy, his master's legacy, and the very existence of the God he serves. They have crossed the invisible line. They have jumped over the fence that surrounds the sacred, laughing. Elisha stops. The dust settles at his feet. The chorus of 42 mocking voices echoes in the hot air. He who just saw God split the sky now hears the voice of the man mocking that same sky. He who bears the weight of the double portion feels the first challenge to that authority. His personal duel evaporates, replaced by the icy coldness of his profession. The prophet turns around, slowly. The biblical narration is cold, clinical, and absolutely terrifying in its brevity. And looking back, he saw them. Let us imagine that moment. The prophet, still with his eyes filled with the fire of the celestial chariot, fixing his gaze on this arrogant crowd. The noise dies down. The laughter gets stuck in their throats. The crowd falls silent, expectant, seeing that the man has stopped and is confronting them. What is this bald old man going to do? Cry? Run away? Shout back at them? Elisha does none of these three things. The man who had just wept for his master has disappeared. The cloak he now wears belongs to him. The anointing is activated. He opens his mouth, and he does not speak with his own voice. He does not shout with personal anger, nor curse with the frustration of a man harassed. The text is precise. And he cursed them in the name of the Lord. This is not a man losing his temper. It is not an insult returned with another insult. It is an official act. It is the function of a prophet. As an ambassador of God, he has received an official challenge to the authority of his king. And as an ambassador, he delivers the official response. A curse pronounced in the name of the Lord is not a wish for bad luck. It is a statement of facts. It is a legal declaration. Elisha is, in effect, removing the protective grace barrier of God around these men. He is invoking the raw, unfiltered justice of the covenant. He is saying, they have challenged the living God. They have asked to see his power. Now face it. A curse spoken in the name of the Lord is not a wish. It is a trigger. It sets in motion a machinery that was already in place. The arrogance of the young had loaded the gun. The prophet's words simply fired it. The old covenant was a two-way street. Blessings for obedience, curses for disobedience. And Beetle's disobedience was old, deep, and institutional. These young people were only the most recent and loudest symptom of the disease. Elisha's words hang in the air, heavy, laden with power. The silence that follows is worse than the screams. The crowd looks at each other, perhaps with nervous laughter. Is that all? A few words? An incantation of an old madman? They have mocked their God, and he has only responded with silence. Arrogance begins to return to their faces. And then, the forest bordering the road responded. The forest, which until that moment had been a silent witness to human stupidity, became the executioner. There was no thunder from the sky. There was no earthquake. The punishment did not come from the supernatural. It came from creation itself. It was an earthly, primitive justice, almost personal. The very earth, the creation they mocked, rose up to defend its creator. First, the sound. A low, guttural growl. A sound that does not belong to a busy road. The crunching of heavy underbrush being pushed aside. The crowd freezes. It is not the sound of a deer or a fox. It is a sound of power, of weight, of warm breath, and of ancient hunger. And then they appeared. 2 bears. The text is deliberately specific. Not a bear. 2. And not bears. She-bears. Female. In the ancient world, everyone knew what that meant. A male bear can attack if provoked, but a she-bear is a demon. A she-bear that has lost her cubs, or that simply fears for them, is not an animal. She is an embodiment of fury. She is the most relentless, irrationally violent, and territorial creature of the forest. God did not send a lion, which kills with purpose. He sent she-bears, which kill with fury. The scene dissolves into utter chaos. The group of 42 men, so brave just a moment before when they faced an unarmed prophet alone, breaks apart. Arrogance turns into a sharp scream of terror. Panic takes hold of them. They scream. They run in all directions. But there is nowhere to escape. The animals are faster, stronger, and driven by a murderous instinct that at that moment is also an instrument of divine justice. It is nature correcting an anomaly. It is creation purging itself of blasphemy. The narration is once again brutally clinical. It does not delight in violence, it simply records it. And 2 bears came out of the mountain and tore 42 boys to pieces. They tore apart. It is a horrible word. It does not say killed. The Hebrew word suggests a violent tearing. It implies an act of dismemberment, overwhelming violence. It is the fury of unleashed nature. And the number, 42. Precision is what chills the blood. The curse was not an accident. It was not a casual encounter with wild animals. It was a surgical judgment. The same number of men who had joined in mockery are now united in death. Those who had shouted, "Go up!" were dragged into the dust by claws and teeth. The ground was stained red. The mocking screams were replaced by screams of agony, and then by silence. It is one of the most terrifying stories in the Bible. It repels our modern sensibility. We want a God who is only love, only patience, only grace. We want a prophet who turns the other cheek, who forgives his persecutors. We want to tame God, to turn him into a kind grandfather who smiles at our mischiefs. But this story is not about our sensitivity. It is about the sensitivity of a different era, of a different covenant. It is a story about the weight of the sacred. It is a tale from the ancient world, where spiritual power was as real and tangible as fire or gravity. And like fire, it could warm, but it could also consume. You cannot mock the sun and expect it not to burn you. You cannot insult the ocean and expect it not to drown you. And you cannot spit on the sacred fire of God's Spirit and expect it not to devour you. Eliseo did not stay to watch. He did not need to. The matter was settled. The text tells us that after the judgment, from there he went to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. He continued his journey. He continued his ministry. Authority had been established. The news of the massacre must have spread like wildfire. The survivors, if there were any who only observed, or travelers on the road, ran to Bethel with the unbelievable story. The city of the golden calf, the capital of mockery, was plunged into a silence of terror. The message was unequivocal. The God of Elijah was still alive. And his new prophet, the bald one, the one who seemed weak, the one they had confused with a spiritual leper, carried within him a power older and more terrifying than any army. The power that had ascended to heaven in a chariot of fire was the same power that could summon the earth to devour its enemies. This story does not exist in the scriptures to make us feel comfortable. It exists to make us tremble. It exists as a boundary mark, like an electric fence around the sacred. It is a brutal reminder that words have consequences, that contempt for the divine is a game played under rules we do not set. The young men of Bethel thought they were talking to a simple man. They learned, in their last and terrible moments, that they had actually attracted the attention of a God, and that God, on that day, on that road, decided to respond.